The most successful leaders are those who fully embrace this mindset of ambiguity, contradiction, openness, and perpetual change, while also keeping one foot firmly planted in the past. According to the authors of this book, this is what it takes for an organization to become beyond great. And let's keep on reading. You'll be fascinated to find that most of the companies going beyond great are not the large digital companies that garner so much attention, but real-world incumbent firms. So if you're a leader in an organization like myself, this sounds like a must-read. What do the authors say? How do we get there? They lay out 9 distinct strategies that you should follow to become beyond great. And you'll find all the buzzwords that you would expect. Talent and customer experience and data. But the authors, so 3 senior partners of the consulting firm, Boston Consulting Group, they go to a very meaningful level of specificity and depth for the executive level on those topics. 2 examples. How do we create a liquefied organization, or how do we move from a one-off product to a more subscription-based business model? So really meaningful things. And those are multiple strategies. You don't need to do all of them at the same time, and most companies rarely do. But there's one thing that fascinated me the most about this book, because there's one strategy that you cannot do without. It's an essential strategy for succeeding with the other 8. They call it always-on transformation, supported by a strong governance in a portfolio of transformation initiatives. How do we do that? How does that really work? I'm excited to be discussing that with one of the authors of the book, Arindam Bhattacharya. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we get started, allow me to introduce you to my audience. Arindam is a senior partner with consulting firm, the Boston Consulting Group, working out of New Delhi, India. He's a writer, thinker, and speaker on globalization and business models. And do check out his TED Talk on that globalization isn't really dead. Quite the opposite, I guess. And he's also a seasoned consultant who knows how these things really work for real-world companies. So Arindam, before I get to how this really works, what does beyond great mean to you?
I'll start with a small story. I think it was 2015. I was in Davos for the World Economic Forum, and one of the unofficial papers that was circulating was titled "Globalization is Dead." And to me, coming from India, and a lot of the emerging markets, globalization is still the lifeblood of how you grow, of how do you connect as you start opening up more and more. And clearly, it seemed to me, sorry to use the term Anglo-Saxon kind of a narrative, and not really real for us. And that started me on this journey around what is happening on the concept of globalization and business models that have been built around globalization. And beyond great is what I say, the second part of the journey in discovering what is happening to globalization and global business models. It has 2 meanings to me. One is the globalization and the global business model. There is no end to this journey. They will continue to evolve. So there is no kind of said that this is a destination, this is a Mount Everest. There is another mountain to climb, and that evolution is in some sense the kind of theme of beyond great, that there is nothing like great, which is an absolute great, but there is always the next set of advantages, the next set of strategies that companies will need to keep on developing and building the businesses on to create the next advantage as the world changes around you. So that's one. And second, in the what I'll call the medium term, which is next 3 to 5 years, what does this mean? It means that the playbook that companies had built over the last, say, 20 years, and there were many books which have come out, which were in some sense shaping this playbook good to great, time-based competition, in search of excellence, re-engineering the corporation. These had created a certain playbook around total shareholder value, around differentiation of products, around scale and cost efficiencies to drive advantage. That playbook, it is not the playbook you have to throw it out, but you need to build certain layer of next set of capabilities on this playbook. And that is the specific story of Beyond Great. So what is this new playbook that companies have today got to build to be able to create the advantage in this 3 to 5 years time period as the world changes around us?
Mm-hmm. And if I understand correctly, the 3 to 5 year period that you're laying out, or that you're referring to now, reflects 8 of the 9 strategies in particular, as in how you change, the customer experience, and of course keep improving that infinitely. But the one aspect that I felt I understood in your book that is an enabler, a key enabler for the other strategies, and something that perhaps will persist also beyond the 3 or 5 years, is that idea of always on transformation. Is that correct?
No, absolutely. The 9 strategies, the way we are kind of designed the playbook of 9 strategies, 3 were around growth, how to rethink growth. 3 were around operating model, and 3 were around what I call the organization and culture. And always on, we have put in the 3rd bucket, which is organization and culture. But to me, it is at the core, in the sense that what is the DNA of a company? The DNA of a company in a much more stable and static environment is a certain kind which is completely different that one would need today in today's fast changing, volatile, and very different environment, which is being shaped by kind of contradictory and conflicting forces in terms of societal tensions, in terms of geopolitical tensions, in terms of the huge opportunities and challenges of data. So in this fast changing world, how do you in some sense keep your playbook current? How do you continuously evolve your company's strategies? And core to that is building what I call the skills and the muscles, not to run sprint, but to run a triathlon. You have to continue to do multiple things simultaneously and sequentially, and being able to do all of them well. And how do you build a DNA, the muscle power, the heart, the head of running successfully a triathlon, and not just focusing on being the best sprinter?
That's fantastic that you should say this. In the last episode, I had a friend on the line, Jesse Fuel, and he said that there is no failed transformation, because every transformation, even though it doesn't perhaps meet the returns that you expected, builds that muscle. It helps you train on changing the organization. So failure is something that you would have to get used to in that along that route.
No, absolutely. So it's a way to think about, say, that earlier the whole mindset was, given that you were operating in a static kind of environment, relatively static environment, even though even in that period the environment to a company would never seem static, it would be saying, okay, we need to improve our EBITDA margins by, say, 20%, and let's do a 3-year transformation program to improve our EBITDA margins at 15 to 20%. And you do that, and then you will think that, okay, let's now is business as usual, and everyone kind of keeps going back to the normal business as usual. It is no more like that. Your day job today is whatever you're doing, but at the same time, you have to run multiple, what I call S-curves. So and the example we use in a book is of Microsoft. And what I say is they run a series of S-curves. They started with saying that, look, we can't be just a Windows company. We have to now move to cloud. So they ran a cloud. While going there, they said, look, it's just not cloud. We need to become intelligent cloud. So they kind of continue to kind of build that. Then they say, it's not just intelligent cloud. We need to become now also do, at the edge. So computing at the edge. So it is just a series of way you evolve your strategy and thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole organization continues to move from one S curve to next S
Mm-hmm.
curve to next S
Mm-hmm.
curve as
Mm-hmm.
as a business as usual. So it
Yes.
needs to become, this kind of, and these are, you can call it one after another triathlon segments as a business as usual for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you called it the operating norm in the book. Yeah, that changing is the operating norm. As you were referring to the Microsoft example, can you give us a little more insight into how you do that? But perhaps in two aspects. One is Microsoft is a huge organization, and most organizations aren't perhaps of that size. So, what is something that normal companies or more normal sized companies could take away? How you manage that constant change with new transformation initiatives coming in all the time, things working out or not working out, new information coming or new technologies arising. How do they manage the thing?
So that's a very interesting question, because I think the starting point on this of a startup or even a digital company is very different from incumbents, an industrial company, because the industrial companies have a mindset of what I call long cycle lead times. They think in terms of product cycles, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, depend upon what kind of industrial product or a consumer product you are in. If you are in a car, it is more of 5 to 6 year cycles. But if you are making industrial machine, it will be perhaps a 20-year cycle. Okay, so you think very differently. A digital company thinks very differently. Their cycle times are weeks sometimes, or at most months, because they have to continuously think about the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. So the question to my mind is, as the startup scales up, I mean, they need to create a way they can still have this short cycle kind of operating models in a large scale, and the incumbents have to come down from this long cycle to shorter cycles. So it's somewhere in the middle. You need to create the operating model, and that's what the operating model of always on. So how do you do that? I think there are 3 or 4 principles that you need to start on, learning from challenges faced by the incumbents, the industrial companies, and the lessons from the startups who naturally do this kind of always on, because they are willing to fail. They will launch a product to fail so that they can learn and then launch it again, rather than trying to perfect the test to the last minute and then launch, which is what car companies do. So it's a very different mental model. So what do you need to do? So one is, I really do think that to be establishing that today, the biggest change that the companies have to make is digital transformation. So you can embed this capability, as you said, the operating model as another function. You can call it digital transformation office, you can call it transformation office or something, but you need to develop and design a series of such initiatives which are managed as a portfolio. That is one part. That is what I call the planning part. And you need to start thinking that, okay, what are the next set of initiatives over next 3 or to 5 year cycle, and I need to manage it as a portfolio. That's one thing. The second thing is, increasingly, and that's the big shift that industrial companies have to make, and what Microsoft did, and big lesson. So Microsoft, if you think of Microsoft before Satya Nadella took over, they were extremely inward focused company. They had this whole DNA of we know it all. Okay, their entire thing was a closed ecosystem. But today, if you think about where the value is getting created, where the innovation is happening, what I call the innovation is happening, what I call it is at the edge, at the customer side, at the innovation side. And often some of the most radical innovations is happening not within large company R&Ds, but in small boutiques, R&D boutiques and startups and so on and so forth. Or a lot of the industrial innovation is also happening in the digital AI-based startups who are creating new solutions to improve performance of a product or a process. Okay, so how do you open up your organization to be able to sense and partner with what I call innovation at the edge, or being able to target the value pools? I think as part of your transformation, you need to start opening up your company. And that's what Microsoft did. I mean, Microsoft went from saying that everything is closed to become the most open source company today. They they partnered with Amazon, they're partnering with Salesforce, they are opened up their source code. They just changed the way they operate, and they created a much more open architecture. And I think that's the second thing.
What I find interesting here, I spoke with the CIO of an engineering company the other day, and we were talking about the portfolios, as you were mentioning, the transformation portfolios. And then I asked him, Richard, what do you think? What is a good portfolio? And he said, it would be a portfolio that is centered around a specific customer need, and that portfolio can span multiple organizations. So he said that even a portfolio of initiatives doesn't include only you as an organization, but includes your partner organizations as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. So in fact, one of my, and we bring this out in the book, that the old model, what I'll call the great playbook, was all about optimizing your supply chain. Okay. In our middle section, in the new operating model, we talk about two very different things. We talk about ecosystems. The ecosystems has become a big part of how you deliver value. And so your portfolio has to embrace ecosystems, your partners. Okay. The other part is the whole thing around how do you create a data architecture, and the data architecture and data flows between your partners, between your customer, between your R&D, external R&D partners, and so on. So how do you construct that, and how can you take ideas from your partners to your customers? So the initiatives that you need to think, what I call how to creating value, has to encompass not just your own value chain, it has to start encompassing your greater ecosystem of partners. And how do you bring them in? Because mentally, most people today in incumbent companies think about their own teams. They don't think about extended teams. And that is a huge shift that you need to start making as a company.
You mentioned that this is a huge shift for a company. What's a very practical first step that you would recommend to organizations? Let's say middle-sized, let's say 20,000 employee, traditional real-world company in, let's say, financial services or engineering or so. What's the first step towards becoming beyond great?
I'll actually I'll actually talk about 2 or 3 things. The most important thing today, I think, is for the company to redefine their customer. And the way I think about it, most industrial companies, as one of the persons I interviewed, the strategy leader of one of the very large industrial companies very well, he said, we are and we continue to be a product out business. Okay, our engineers design the product, and our sales guys sell the product. Okay, we take some customer inputs, some surveys and all, and some data around how are our products functioning and so on, to design the new product and understand what are the technology shifts, and then we design. We have to become customer in. We need to take our design engineers, our technologists, our sales guys to the customer and understand how the customer is using the product through the life cycle of the product to its disposal, and then design what should be my intelligent hardware. So what are the different things I need to do in intelligent hardware? What are the layers of solution, which I call the integration of digital and the physical solutions that I have to build? And there you start saying that I cannot build these solutions myself because I don't have the capability. I don't even sometimes have the data.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to create a way I can partner with people who have the data and the capability to be able to offer the solution to the customer. And let me give you an example which you use in the book of John Deere tractors. Now, it's as old world industrial product as you can get. I mean, industrial that it does something to produce crops. Okay. Now, they want, and they were the global leaders in trucks and harvesters and all this farm equipment, but they're saying that our job, or what we are, is not to make the best tractor. What we have to do is to maximize or help the farmer maximize the profit per hectare of his farm.
Mm-hmm.
But to do that, how do you do that? I mean, if you were to put yourself in the shoes of the farmer, what does he have to do? He just not just needs to know how the tractor, what is the kind of cost of my tractor, but he needs to know what is the soil quality, what depth I need to put the seed in, what kind of fertilizers I need to give, what is the pricing of my crop when it comes in, what is the weather going to be. There are so many different variables which impacts the profit. But John Deere doesn't have all the data. So they need to partner. They are partnered with people like a company that has drone technology, which looks at the soil conditions and gives you the soil moisture requirements and tells you which depth you need to plant to maximize. And so they need to partner with a lot of people. And that is what the ecosystem is. What they've created is a way that you can partner, and they build the algorithm to be able to help the farmer maximize the profit. Okay, so you need to start thinking of your customer, not just to sell a tractor, but to put yourself in the shoes. So I think that's the first step. And then that allows you to identify lots of different initiatives that you need to do internally and with partners.
Mm-hmm. Starting at the business outcome of your customer in that sense.
Absolutely.
For business to
And
business
it's not
marketing.
just because the business outcome for a farmer is not just at the point of planting a seed. It is till the point he harvests the crop. So you need to understand the entire life cycle of the machine or of the usage of, and that is often not done because you sell the product, then the farmer or whoever machine will come, he will reach out to you whenever there's a breakdown, and you will send the engineer who will, repair the machine, and then that's how it happens. You have to take ownership. And you have to be in a constant two-way communication. And that is a very different way to start building your business model customer in.
Okay. So first step, starting with the customer and the outcome. Then last question, perhaps. Would you say that this is true for all companies all across the world?
I would say absolutely, because there's a one fundamental change that has happened today. Digitization, digital connectivity has fundamentally changed the role and the behavior of the customer for B2B and B2C. Everyone from consumer companies to digital companies to industrial companies, customer can raise a tweet, he can raise a Facebook post that the machine is not working. You can fundamentally today remain in communication with the customer right through his experience at not any great cost. So it is true for every company. And I think that's the place to start. The only other place that I think companies have to start thinking about, the big shift, is value will be created not just within your own value chain. Value is going to get created also at your edges by your partner. So you need to start thinking of not your value chain, of your ecosystem. If there are two messages I want to give, these will be two. And always on is at the center of this.
Fantastic. Great message to end the interview. Good for us, all of us who love working for their customers, who are putting the customer need first, that this is what we as organizations are really about. Arindam, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And I always enjoy talking about Beyond Great. I think that's a journey for me and is a journey for anyone who's kind of progressing to the next stage of performance.